My name is Juliana Nicolasian, and today is October 22nd, 2010. I'm visiting with Dr. Jim Bose on the Oklahoma State University campus in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is one of a series of interviews with members of the OSU class of 1960 who are on campus for their 50th reunion. And this interview is part of the OState Stories Oral History Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, let's begin by learning a little bit more about you. Where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
Bessie, Oklahoma. It's in the western part of the state, down between Clinton and Cordell, Oklahoma. A city of about 205 people. Probably always be 205 because nobody's building any new houses.
Wow, and did you grow up on a farm?
We had a farm. We raised wheat, cotton, and alfalfa hay, and we farmed in West Texas, and we had around 5,000 acres of land, and there were 5 boys and 5 girls, and my dad, and that was the team that did all the work, and we hired occasionally during harvest extra people, but yeah, I grew up on the farm. I've got a lot of hours in the tractor seat.
Mm. And did you have a favorite farm chore? Or were all chores not so much fun? But
well, you're always looking for the easiest one, and I guess that was going after the cows in the pasture, and then just had one cow to milk, so that was the easiest. And the most unfavorite was just combining wheat and then heading south, because the wind was, or heading north, the wind was always behind you, blowing the trash out of the combine, the straw and stuff over the top of your neck and into your eyes, and so just that one direction when you were cutting wheat where it was just really miserable. Eyes would be red, But then when you turned and headed back south, and there's a fresh breeze.
well, were you always interested in going to college growing up?
That's all I ever heard from my father. My father, well, really my grandfather, he in Bessie, Oklahoma, he gave room and board to the school teacher. They had one school teacher, and so when my dad graduated, he spent 5 years in the 8th grade, because my grandfather wouldn't let him leave school until he had a chance to go to the university, and his younger brother was 5 years younger, so he waited until my Uncle Carl was old enough to go to college, and so then they both went. They came to Oklahoma State University in a Model T car, and it took them, I guess, 2 days to get here. Now it takes about 2.5 hours. So he really loved Oklahoma A&M, and that's all I heard all my life is, well, when you grow up, you're going to go to Oklahoma A&M, you're going to be a mechanical engineer. I never heard anything else. Nobody else advised me except my English teacher in high school, Thelma Brandley. She said, where are you going to go to school? And I told her Oklahoma A&M. She said, well, you'll need to learn how to write themes, and there'll be 5 paragraphs long, an introduction, conclusion, and 3 paragraphs in the middle. And so we practiced on writing, 5 paragraph themes for as long as I can remember in high school. And so I came up here, and English was pretty easy. I did have 3 teachers, though, in English. They changed the first one for some unknown reason. The second one was drafted into the military. The third one we finished with it. But in each case, we always started off with an F on our first paper. It seemed like to be a tradition.
Where'd you have English class?
Oh, golly, I guess that was probably in the classroom building. I think it was up by then, right? So it'd been in the classroom building. Yeah.
Well, we'll get back to the classroom building, but what year did your father graduate, and what was his major?
Well, he was in mechanic arts. That's what they called it back then. And he graduated in 1917.
Okay.
And just at the end of the First World War, he got on a troop train. They were going to ship him out. He got all the way to Guthrie, Oklahoma. They declared an armistice, and so he just went home. So that was his tour of duty, was 1 day, so he was a veteran of 1 day. Always a little embarrassed about it, but it was just 1 day, but he was a veteran, had a uniform and everything. So.
And why was he so interested in you pursuing mechanical engineering?
Well, my grandfather and even my father, they were, they started off with horses, and then they got the first one-horse engine, which was kind of small, and it was kind of large for a one-horse engine. And then when the tractors first came out to be sold, they were all mechanical. See, and so you had to learn how to drive the tractor. Then they were also in the hardware business, so they sold tractors. And so if they sold a tractor to a farmer, then these farmers would get on this tractor. He used to talk all the time, and they'd want to stop, and they'd yell, "Whoa, whoa!" They were still used to driving, working horses. So he always had that interest in mechanics. And so whenever he was young, and my grandfather, who was a hardware dealer in Bessie, he bought a one-horse engine and brought it home, and my dad took it completely apart, and my grandfather looked at it and he says, he didn't know what to say, so he says, if you can put it back together and make it run, I'll buy you a new Model T car. And he did.
Wow.
So he had a Model T car, which later on my cousin drove the thing, and I don't know exactly where that car is right now, but that's just familiarity with something that was new and exciting, and that was tractors and machinery and that sort of thing, and not have to put up with horses.
Well, when was the first time you came to Oklahoma A&M?
Well, it was the day before school started. My dad brought me up, and I had a twin brother named Bob, and he also graduated at the same time I did, same degrees and everything. And he just dropped us off at Bennett Hall. And we looked around, and he'd given us a checkbook, so I didn't have to worry about money. And gave us a checkbook, and I remember that first day we were here, there was no cafeteria open in Bennett Hall, so we didn't know where we were going to eat. But we did have some money, and so one of the guys says, "Well, we can go downtown here in Stillwater on the north side of town. There's a small grocery store, and they had garlic, bologna, and bread." And so we bought a loaf of bread and a chunk of garlic, and felt like we were just out there in the field. And that's the way they used to feed us at harvest time, something simple, and then fed you 2 or 3 times a day so that you wouldn't be sleepy all the time. So yeah, I came here the first time the day before school started. My roommate told me, he said, "Now they're giving placement tests over in Gallagher Hall. You go in the little lap board," and my roommate, I didn't room with my twin brother Bob because it was embarrassing to always be referred to as the twins. So he said, "Don't do too well, because if you do, they're going to put you in an advanced class and you'll have a really, really hard time." Well, I didn't do too well in English and other courses that first semester. I told my dad at Thanksgiving, "This is a piece of cake up here." Second semester, they took the slack out of the rope, but we were just a repeat of high school the first semester because I did so poorly on the placement. He told me to do, don't get in over your head, Jim. So, okay, whatever.
Well, what was it like living in Bennett Hall?
Well, probably not a lot different. We did have some football players over there with us, and they always provided a tremendous amount of entertainment. They would get some hot dogs, and they'd get a wastebasket full of paper, and then they'd cook hot dogs in the hallway, and then one time I guess they got bored and they poured some lighter fluid underneath our door and set it on fire. And they did things that right now, if you did that, well, you'd be sent to counseling. Nobody could understand why you would do something like that, but back then it was just all in fun, So it was pretty nice. We had a really, really good cafeteria. If you come off a farm, you go up and have your choice of 2 or 3 things to eat during mealtime. Well, that was a plus. When I was at home, and there was never more than 7 children at home at one time. You got your designated piece of chicken, you got mashed potatoes and gravy, whatever. But up here, you had your choice of maybe 3 different entrees, So I don't know, we didn't call them entrees, but you had a choice, and that was different, than we always ate well at home.
Mm-hmm.
And we ate well here at the university. Tuition was about $70 a month.
Mm-hmm.
No, $70 a semester.
Mm-hmm.
All the courses you wanted to take.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could take 5 hours, 10 hours, whatever, all one price.
And how many courses did you start out taking?
Well, probably the normal load, 16 hours, somewhere around there. I can't remember.
Did you have an on-campus job?
Oh no. I had a full-time summer job working on the farm. And before that, my dad just sent us to school. So I was really lucky. I had that what we call Ed Bose scholarship. He did ask us one time, my brother and I, why we weren't spending enough money. He said, "It doesn't seem like you guys are spending hardly any money." Well, we didn't have to have any money back when we were growing up because we lived in Bessie, which, you know, you didn't need a whole lot of money. There wasn't a movie store, there wasn't anything. It's just, you know, just pretty sparse living, you know. I remember I started out one summer with about 30 cents in my pocket. At the end of the summer, I still had 30 cents.
Well, while you were here in Stillwater, you had a lot of time on your hands outside of studying. What did you do for fun?
I mean, engineering. I remember we didn't have a whole lot of time on our hands. I guess I was...
Surely you did something. You didn't study
Oh,
all the time.
Oh, no, not all the time. I remember we used to take about a half hour off after the evening meal. And I had a good friend from out of Sarah, Oklahoma. He was a taskmaster. 30 minutes, then back upstairs and study. And we'd study till about 10 o'clock. And other people would, study all night long. Never did study. We just studied whenever it was daylight. But it was different. There was no air conditioning in the building. But, there was no air conditioning at home either.
Mm-hmm.
So, we used to it.
Campus hangouts?
Well, it used to be right down here on the end of Washington Street. There was the white barn or something, or Cliff's Cafe. That's right, it was Cliff's Cafe. One of the guys on the floor had a car, and every once in a while he'd take some of us down and go down here to Cliff's and sit there and eat hamburgers or whatever they were serving. But without a car, you didn't do just a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
But he did have a car, and he was, that was unusual for a person to have a car. And then one of the guys on the floor had a girlfriend. That was unusual too, So.
And would you date much?
Not very much, because I don't think I ever had a single date in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was from Bessie, and there was 10 miles. We rode a bus, and so and the girls in Bessie we'd known them all their lives. So, and there was only 2 of them in my class, my 8th grade class, and they were not really nice girls, but they had boyfriends out of Clinton, So we lost all that. But it was. I wouldn't be considered a social animal. I mean, I'm okay now, but back then, it was. I had 4 sisters, see, so it wasn't like it was something novel about them. They were girls. Girls were girls, but I enjoyed looking at them. There was all different kinds. More girls in one spot than I'd ever seen in my whole life.
Would they congregate in certain parts of campus, or?
Yeah, right over here on the corner of the business and the classroom, there was a hut, and that was where you go in and drink coffee. And there was a white frame building right there at that corner, and I'm not sure, but I think maybe the proprietors of that had sight problems, and I can't remember the name of the hut, but I think it was maybe called the hut.
The Y Hut.
The Y Hut. Okay. All right. How do you know all that? So we go in the Y Hut every once in a while and have some coffee, but I hadn't drank coffee when I was out in Bessie, Oklahoma. We just didn't. It wasn't a big thing at the house. That's what everybody else was doing, Everybody wore Levi's and a white T-shirt. That was it. Everybody looked alike. Took ROTC, everybody was doing the same thing. You had to take ROTC back then, first 2 years.
So you had to wear your uniform on certain days of the week?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You go and always look over there at the Armory or where the School of Architecture is now and look up on the top to see which flag was flying. Sometimes it was, there were certain times, whenever you went from the summer dress to winter dress, and it didn't make any difference, you could be burning up in whatever you had, but it wasn't time to go to the summer dress yet. And so, you lived by the flag. Of course, we had our own rifle over there that we had to clean. And guy here in town, I can't remember his name. Don't know if he's still alive. His name was Mize. He was a sergeant in the Army. And boy, I tell you what, it didn't make any difference what you did with that rifle. It was never clean enough. And then a lot of times, he could always find rust. And if you had rust on it, well, then you had to clean all the rust off of it and oil it up. And it was just, I guess they thought this was going to make soldiers out of all of us.
Well, I heard back in your day as a student that engineering was quite rigorous on campus.
It was quite rigorous then, and it's also rigorous
I know
now,
it, yeah, definitely now,
It's,
but back then it was quite rigorous.
Yeah, there was in 1955, I guess, until about 4 or 5 years ago, was the largest class that we had at Oklahoma A&M and OSU. But now I think the enrollment's gotten bigger than that. So 55 was a big year. But yeah, you had to study quite a bit.
Any memories stand out from some of your instructors?
Oh, there's some real characters. Carroll M. Leonard, he was a professor in mechanical engineering, and I remember one summer we were taking a class from him in Cordell South, and it was really, really hot, and he was sitting in a chair lecturing, and he fell asleep while he was lecturing. Of course, the class just sat there, and he kept on mumbling about something, and he kept mumbling about his girlfriend or something. And of course, we knew his wife. But he woke up and he says, "What'd I say? What'd I say?" And everybody just sat there and just stared at him. But yeah, old Leonard, you've probably heard of Leonard's Jewelry downtown. Well, his son is the one that had that jewelry business, and that's probably the one thing that the story that I tell quite a bit, because I know his son, who has the jewelry store. But there were so many of them. Some of them very good. I remember there was one in electrical engineering named Paul McCollum. Boy, he was a dangerous person. He made things look so easy you didn't want to study in his class, and then you'd get wiped out on a test. He was really, really good, and but he was one that I can remember as being one of the better teachers. He was never promoted to professor because he didn't have a doctorate degree or something, which I always thought was, back at that time, it was a little unfair, and it's probably still unfair too for people that just like to teach and not get so uptight about all the other things that you're supposed to do.
So while you're going to school for your undergraduate degree, did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to do, what you wanted to be?
No, not a clue. My dad said he wanted me to go up to school in mechanical engineering. I said I'd go until I flunk out. He said, sounds good enough to him. I don't think when you come in as a freshman you have any idea what engineers do. You think you do, but you really don't. And it takes a while to figure that out. And if you're not careful, you can get discouraged in the first few years because all you're studying are basics. You don't, but they're getting better than that now than what we did back then. But I kind of knew what mechanics was all about, and mechanical things, because my dad bought my twin brother and I a Model T car. Still have it. It's 1927, and we would go ahead and take it apart, overhaul it, put new rings in it, do all sorts of things. And my dad was really good about letting us do that, And occasionally he'd have to come in and help us to straighten out what got messed up. But I had some idea, but I didn't have any idea about what engineering was.
And when did you figure it out?
Probably in about the last 10, 15 years.
So not even while you were in school?
Well, you still, it's going to school isn't real. I mean, it's not like going to work. I worked at Ford one summer, and worked at Caterpillar, and worked for the Air Force. And unless you get out and go to work, you really, it's what you learn in school is not what is out there on the job. Because out there on the job, you think, you're going to go out there and you're going to set the world on fire. You're going to design a rocket. You're going to do all this and all that. I remember one time I went to Stanford to a summer course, and I thought, boy, this is going to be something, because Stanford is something, and walked in there, and they described the first project that we were going to work on, and it was the study of a pair of vice grip pliers, try to cut the manufacturing cost. I tell you what, we tried everything. We never could come up with something that the manufacturer said, well, that's a good idea, because, man, everybody had taken all the thought out of it where, you could come in and make it. So generally, it depends. If you go to work for some company, you probably not get to explore a lot of things that you may think of or dream of, because, you have a job to do and so forth and so on. If you went to work for General Motors or something like that, you probably wouldn't have a whole lot of freedom unless you was one of the big boys, one of the designers or conceptual designers or stuff like that. But generally, there's a lot of work that's just pretty routine. But it can be enjoyable. I mean, it's nice to do something and later on find out, well, what you did was right.
Well, after you received your undergraduate degree in which year?
1960.
Okay. So after you received your degree, what did you go on to do?
Well, right at about the time I finished my graduate degree, or undergraduate degree, the Russians put Sputnik in the air, bachelor's or master's. Well, then everybody that had any kind of brain at all was then recruited to go to graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was in the challenge, and so I went right into graduate school, and ended up just staying here until I finished a PhD. Never only intention even getting past a bachelor's degree or even a bachelor's degree, but that's just the way it happened. I mean, just kept going to school because I didn't flunk out, like I promised my dad. My dad was a little bit concerned though when I told him I was going to try to get a PhD, and he was concerned that if I wasn't successful with that, it might bother me. Well, thunder! I'd already been bothered enough up here by some cranky old professors. I mean, I wasn't under any illusion that this was just a piece of cake. Well, it wasn't hard. You just had to keep after it. I mean, you just had to didn't want to get behind. That's one thing you don't want to do is get behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Did your father attend every graduation?
Oh yeah. My twin brother and I have both got PhDs at the same time, and it's a big day. A lot of colors, a lot of gowns and caps and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, he enjoyed it.
And where was graduation held?
In Gallagher.
Mm-hmm.
It's Gallagher Ivan now, but it's Gallagher back then.
Mm-hmm.
He did wrestle for Ed Gallagher.
Really?
My dad, yeah. Yep, sure did.
Did you enjoy the wrestling?
Oh yes, I tell you what, I saw one wrestling match with OU where OU had Dr. Death, and I don't know if you remember that one, but the guy, the OU fans are up there in Gallagher, just yelling, Dr. Death, Dr. Death, Dr. Death, and going into the final match, the heavyweight match, is that if our heavyweight didn't get pinned by Dr. Death, if he just didn't get pinned, we would tie the match. I believe that's the way it was. It was that close.
Uh-huh.
Well, this guy, old Dr. Death, he comes out, and our guy was huge. I mean, he was heavy. I mean, mighty borderline on fat. But old Dr. Death came out, and he grabbed him and picked him up, and Dr. Death stumbled backwards, and this guy fell on him and knocked the wind out of him and pinned him, and just boom, like that, it was over with. We won the match. It just went dead silent. And then I thought the building would explode just from all the noise. Oh, it was wild and crazy. It was a match to behold. I mean, you couldn't set the stage for anything better. Those OU fans all hyped up, we're going to win this match, which they didn't used to win a whole lot of them. They're going to win it. They're going to beat us, they were ahead, and pretty sure that our guy was going to pin our guy. Why? It was just about to clap your hands. It was over with. We won. But I've seen the Cowboys beat OU 4 times in football, so that's quite a few. Now, I hadn't seen them all, but I saw some really good games. One of them score was 17-16 down there at Norman. The next year it was 15-14 up here. Boy, that was a long period for the people in Norman.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you were a student, did you see many football games, basketball games?
Oh yeah, I saw Wilt Chamberlain play here. I saw a lot of real barn burners. I watched Eddie Sutton play. I mean, in my freshman year, I think he was still playing. He was a senior, but in Moab, all of those guys. We had some good football players. Duchendorf, out from Cloud Chief, Oklahoma, in that part of the country. He played up here. Well, I saw him in high school, playing basketball. Well, he got that ball. He'd shoot it in high school and make most of it. Well, in college up here, it took old Hank Ibe a while to convince him that other people could shoot too. So yeah, I've seen a lot of sports.
Mm.
But I I'll never believe the football stadium that we have now compared to what we used to have. Man, it was just old steel bleachers, with a running track around the inside. Very Spartan, but it was bigger than high school, football field. So yeah, seen a lot of exciting games.
How was the attendance back then?
Well, not as nearly as many as you have now because the university was smaller. But they did enjoy their football. But the basketball was always well attended too, because you don't have nearly as many seats in Gallagher as you did out in Lewis Field. Back when it was Lewis Field. So.
How did the tickets work for students?
Well, everybody got to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wasn't like this thing over here with all these tents. Students out there trying to get that first or second row, whatever. That's kind of new to me to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you received your PhD in which year?
66.
66. And then what happened?
Well, I went to my PhD advisor had a research program going on in fluid power, so I went to continue to work for him. He was my advisor as an undergrad. I was a PhD student, so he hired me to work a year as an employee out there, and then one long after that, well, then they were hiring new faculty members, and so then they offered me as a job as an assistant professor. I don't think I'm qualified today. I don't think they'd hire me today with my ability. But, like my twin brother and I say, we've pulled the wool over our eyes this long. I don't know why we can't continue to do it. So, you come from Bessie, you really don't know what to expect when you come up here, whether you can handle it or not. And it takes a while, if you're not around mathematics, your whole life, then when you get into it, it's a little foreign. It's like a foreign language. And then after you use it for a number of years, then pretty soon, it gets to be, well, yeah, that's what it has to be. it just doesn't it wouldn't make any sense for it to be any other way. So it takes a while to convert over, I guess, from a farmhand, to somebody that sits there and makes a living with a pencil. So you were hired as an assistant professor.
Mm-hmm. Did you teach?
Mm-hmm.
What did you teach right off?
Well, Jay Boggs, who was vice president up here for a while, he was the head of mechanical engineering. And he hired me on first job to teach mechanical drawing. And so I taught mechanical drawing, and so did my brother Bob. And then after that, it was kinematics and just all sorts of things, And the Dean Reed, who's the dean right now, he ended up one time having me teach nonlinear automatic control. Oh, that was horrible, because that was hard to understand, let alone teach it. But I got lucky. There's a guy named Mulholland who we team taught the course, and he didn't like the computer simulation of it that I did, and I didn't like what he did. So it was a perfect match. I'd listen to him, and I learned a lot, and he would listen to me, and I guess I'm not sure he was ever interested enough to really figure out numerical simulations like we had to do it back then, because everything, the first computer we ever had, you could not imagine how much effort it was to program it. I mean, big long boxes of cards, and you punch those with a card punch machine, and you take them over and you shove them in a window, and if there was just one mistake, you come back, you get a wad of paper and no output results, whatever. And you maybe get one turnaround every 24 hours. Nowadays, what we did, what took us 24 hours to do, you do in the amount of time it takes you just to enter it into the computer. So it's not like anything ever before.
But where was the first computer?
Well, it's hard to say, but the biggest and the first one was probably the IBM 650 in the basement of the home economics building. It occupied a room maybe 3 times as big as this, and it didn't have as much computer power as my wristwatch. But they started off huge and with very, very little capacity, and they're all tube type machines. And so what they had was a big, huge air conditioner down there to cool these things off. And and if one of the drills would be is that if the air conditioning went off, well, then everybody that was down there was supposed to come in and take the side panels off of this thing so that they wouldn't, overheat. And so, it was just like the big energy consumers,
Wow. And we think about today, and
yeah, and I remember, it's really hard. Sometimes at university to change, and I remember I had gone to Ford and worked in the summertime on a computer, kind of a teletype that entered in stuff to the computer, and I learned how to do that. And the Ford, and there had some very large computing facilities. And I came back here and was able to hustle up some money from I don't know exactly who, but I had the opportunity to hook up to a system in Oklahoma City over the telephone line. And the people in the computer department would let us because they didn't want to let it get off campus. And I remember we had a guy named Roger Kepi who was over in one of the other sciences, came into this meeting and said, honestly, I cannot understand this place. He said, here's a guy that has the money, has the knowledge to do this thing, and we're saying, no, I thought this was a university. And boy, I mean, he pulled it off for me. And so I was over there with my department head to use a computer, that was time shared with somebody else. I mean, you just cannot imagine, the reluctance of some people around this back then, maybe now for change. I mean, it just frightened them to death. What if we lose control? Well, who wants control? You're responsible.
And I'm sure engineering has seen lots of changes through the years, and you have to keep up, and you have to keep innovating. And
oh my! I mean, you think it started off, change came along, fairly often, and then nowadays, I mean, it's the software people are driving the computer people, the computer people are driving the software people, and it's just a mad race. I mean, who could ever imagine the storage devices you have on a simple thumb drive?
It's crazy.
It really is. I mean, it really is crazy.
Well, did you remain in the classroom this whole time throughout your career?
I always had a research contract. Yeah.
So how did you get involved with the ground source heat pump?
Well, that was an easy start. I was trying to figure out how to make solar systems economic, so I can't remember where, but I got some money from. Oh, it's during the Carter administration. I wrote a proposal, solar-assisted ground coupled heat pumps, because I'd been messing with solar, but man, the economics of that were bad. Still are, but they were just as bad back then because of the first cost of them, and then the storage and all this and all that. So somebody at the university got a call from somebody in Oklahoma City that had a problem with his heating and cooling system, that the swimming pool was being overheated by this air conditioner. Well, it turned out to be a heat pump. And the swimming pool was so hot the kids couldn't swim in it. He called me down and says, I need some help to get this thing straightened out. He says, I can't afford any city water. I didn't know. I was trying to figure out what a heat pump was. And so I said, well, I'll go back to university and see what I can find. And I opened up one of my old textbooks, and in the back of the textbook was a section on earth coils. Earth coils. I never heard of that before. Opened it up, and man, everything that I needed was right there. I thought, and so I got interested in that. For some odd reason, I couldn't get it out of my mind. And of course, then I hopped over to the library, because in the back of the book were references. In the back of those other books in the library, more references, and they kept talking about the efficiency of this thing. And it was hard for me to believe that it was that efficient and nobody was doing it. So I talked to one of my professor buddies up there in mechanical engineering. I said, hey, this looks pretty good. And he said, yeah, it does. And we visited a little bit about it, but he didn't do anything. So I went out and saw a local HVAC contractor and asked him a few questions about it and so forth and so on. About 3 nights later, we took an existing air source heat pump, which uses air for energy source, which isn't, a lot of days it's too cold, that air doesn't do you that much good. And we converted it into a water-based thing, and about 3 days later, we had a water source heat pump and hooked these coils to it, and it worked. The first one worked. And so this guy that his name was Jim Parton. He was next to me up in school. We installed one in his home. I mean, we installed it. I mean, literally, we did it. That was 30-some years ago, and it's still running.
Wow.
The first one we ever did worked. But they're altogether different now. The heat pumps are about 50% more efficient. The piping that we put in the ground it was always good because it was developed by the natural gas industry, and so it's really, really simple. Really simple. And again, it saves people around 30 to 35% of their energy and about 50% of their operating costs. So it's a standard. Everything else has to compare to it.
So do you field lots of calls, lots of questions?
Well, we formed an association because we had a lot of people involved in this thing. Right now, that association is here at Oklahoma State University, and we have about 7,000 members.
Wow.
So we have an annual conference up in Denver next week, and there'll be around 600 people there, and we'll have Department of Energy there, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, people from all over the country, China, Japan, Korea. We even had 6 people here from Mongolia studying it. So we captured the technology, and the government looks at us as the place where you want to go if you want to see what's going on. And we've had about to this point over $10 million worth of outside support for just the research. And I don't know how much we've had for that association, but that really keeps me in a nice life. I have full summer employment and employment during the semester, so it gives you the kind of freedom you never thought you'd have.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the benefits?
Efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's about 30 to 35% more efficient than anything you can put out there. The operating costs are about 50%. There's nothing that's outdoors. Everything is either buried underground or sits inside like a refrigerator, and that makes the maintenance cost almost zero. I've had one in my home for 10 years, and the only thing I've ever changed is the filters.
Wow.
I can do that. And I mean, it just keeps running. I mean, just as steady as it can be. You turn it on, you expect it to come on. And it's really simple, and it's not like some of the other renewable energy things where you have to have tremendous investment to get into the business. Here, you don't have to. You can hire somebody to trench, put the pipe in the ground, and then everything else indoors is the same as a conventional system. So, I mean, you can be in a really high efficient, HVAC system with minimal outlay yourself. And of course, after a while, you see how much the driller's making, so then you get the idea that I'll have to own my own drilling rig. So that's generally what happens. They'll get a drilling rig and trencher, the heat fusion equipment that fuses the pipe together. The pipe has no mechanical connections in it that goes underground, so it'll just last forever. We tell people it has a warranted life of 50 years and expected life of 200.
Wow.
But in 200 years, I won't have to back it up with with any kind of warranty.
Why do you think it's important to seek out renewable energy sources?
Well, about 10 or 15 years ago, it might have been longer than that, Governor Henry Bellman got interested in this technology through a friend of a friend. And I went down to the state capitol and trying to sell him on the idea that those abandoned oil wells out there would be a good way to suck all the oil out of the ground. We ought to take all the heat out of the ground. So I really sold him and really talked to him, and he said, "Well, if it's that good, we ought to do the whole state capitol." Whoa, I didn't know what to do. I thought, oh my word, I'm in over my head now. But we did it, and he went and got some money from the Department of Energy on oil overcharge monies, and he installed it in the basement, in the first 2 floors, because the 3rd and the 4th floor, I believe, were the House and the Senate, and they had their own budgets. And he said, "Well, you guys, you take care of your own stuff. I'll take care of the basement and the 1st and 2nd floor." And that's what he did. And of course, they came up with the money to finish it out all the way out. So he was the one that was saying, he was a big fan of Lester Brown. You know Lester Brown?
I do not.
Lester Brown is a real conservationist, and he's written several books, Plan B and Plan 2.0 or something. very much of a conservationist, and he talks about, the third world is going to demand their share of the energy, and that's what Governor Bellman was talking about. And back then, when can that happen? When could that be? I didn't think that happened in my lifetime. Well, now we're seeing that China and those other places that they want some of that energy too, and they're going to make us a run for it. Here we got this huge military defending our oil that's overseas.
Right.
And so, he could see that, and so I thought one day, I had been reading this book, and I thought, well, I'll just ask the governor if you've ever read this book, and I asked him, and he said, yes. He says, I've met him twice. I thought, oh boy. So you think you're cutting a wide swath, but Governor Bellman was a really, really an interesting person. Boy, so consistent, so honest, and so good. The day before he died, he called up and asked about a ground source heat pump for his house. Could not believe that he died the next day. I was out in the front yard mowing it, and my wife came out and says, that's Governor Bellman on the phone. I thought, what in the world, But I know we'd gone several places. We went over to Oilton one time, to a school over there. They'd installed their own geothermal heat pump, and he was, Oilton, Oklahoma. And there could be a lot of places. He'd been all over the world. He saw Sadat. He knew all those people, And here we are in Oilton, Oklahoma, talking about heat pumps. He'd tell some really, really funny stories. And the one I liked the best was when Bud Wilkinson, OU football coach, was running for some office. I can't remember whether it was governor or whether it was senator. But they had been invited out to some Indian celebration, and they were campaigning. And the Indians out there had a delicacy for me. That was this liver kind of cooked in a gravy, and they didn't have any utensils, and so Governor Bellman, he just picked his up with his hands and eating it, and he said, oh, Bud Wilkinson picked that up. He had that real fancy clothes on. He was quite a socialite. And he said that gravy was running down his hands on that shirt. He says, I really think it took the fire out of him as far as the political scene.
I could see that.
Yeah. It just things like that. I've met so many interesting people in this business. China. Those guys, the only thing you remember them is they're always trying to get you drunk. Because they say, unless you're drunk, you never know a person's true feelings. Well, I can drink a couple of them like they did, but one English phrase they all knew, and that was bottoms up.
And I'm sure they said it many, many times.
Oh yeah, they're really nice people.
But does the state capitol still run the heat pump?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many heat pumps do you think are installed in Oklahoma?
Well, I don't know. There's about 1.5 million here in the United States, and I would have no way of estimating how many in Oklahoma. Bunches of them, though. I can remember the first time I didn't know one was going in. I felt kind of shorted that they should have had me out there watching. Now, somebody's putting one in. I said, well, that's good. That's about it. It's really become, kind of mainstream around here.
Wow. Well, this is your 50th class reunion.
Yep.
Looking back, any fond memories?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure I have some. I could make up some. Well, I mean, you know, there's things I remember you never forget. And one time was, I guess, little Dillard was our football player, you know, or one of them was, and we had OU going, and I mean, right toward the end of the game, we just needed, I don't know how many more points to beat him. And boy, all of a sudden, this guy, he gets out there in front of, behind all the OU people. I mean, he's so wide open, it's unbelievable. You would have thought that he'd run off the bench. Threw him a ball, and he reached up and grabbed that ball and brought it down, and he kicked it out of his hands, and he foamed. I mean, you talk about a groan. But, you know, there's some things you just cannot imagine how difficult that was to accept that. We had him beat. You know, we just had him beat. But, boy, though I learned out over these years, you've got to beat him for 60 minutes. You can't just beat him for 59. Those guys have a way of scooting underneath the door.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's so unpredictable sometimes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They have a lot of tradition down there. But I guess they'll probably have to bring their first team up here this year. You know, I remember one year that they had one of their tackles and put him in the backfield, and I guess he thought he was going to, be the best running back. I don't think he gained a yard. I mean, it looks so easy for those guys, the backs to carry the ball, but this tackle tried it, and he didn't do anything. He just couldn't get up head of steam, I guess, whatever.
Well, you've been here for your entire educational career. You've been here for your professional career. What is so special about Oklahoma State University?
Well, I just haven't found a better job, I guess. I've been offered a lot of jobs.
You could have gone anywhere, probably. Why stay in Oklahoma? Why OSU?
Well, it's close to home. I mean, I've got sisters and brothers not too far away, and I've always been treated well. I always knew how much I was worth if I was working out in the industry, because I had a brother who worked for Lockheed Martin. And every time one of the professors up there said, boy, if I was out in the industry, I'd be doing this, I'd be making this kind of money. I'd call old Bob up and say, Bob, what are you making? And he'd tell me, and I said, okay, you got me a little bit, but not much. I knew all my life about what I was worth if I was working for an aircraft company. They generally pay fairly well. So the pay was fair, probably more than I deserved, but take it anyhow. But there's just something about it. I mean, it's... you're always underestimated. Mm-hmm. We went up to Brookhaven National Lab and walked in. We had done this videotape on ground source heat pumps, whatever, and I'll never forget this guy named Phil Metz. He said, where did you get that tape done? And I said, oh, next door on the campus. I mean, why? And he said, it's pretty good. And I thought, well, what do you mean? I mean, our flush toilets are still flushing. I mean, it's it is an energy-rich state, and it's got a lot going for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So what's next on the agenda for you?
Well, I don't know. Guess dying, I guess.
Are you going to keep on working, or?
Well, it's time for me to give somebody else this job, because it's a good job and somebody needs a good job, and so. If I got a real problem, because a lot of I've hired almost everybody in the division that I'm in. Okay, so I mean everybody else I've hired, and I've seen people retire on me. I've seen some of their kids come back to school. If you've been in a job for 50 years, you got a couple of cycles going in there. I start talking about that, and they just, they are sincere. They say, please don't. And I guess they'd rather trust the devil they know than the devil they don't know. Mm-hmm. And I don't seem to be too bossy. I don't think I am. Some of them get by with murder, but eventually they get caught up. I think they get a little disappointed in how they're doing, but thinking that they could talk you into a good story, and it's pretty easy to see through a lot of stories. I know when the university provost talked about, we're looking at this, a sustained performance. We got some guys that'll run pretty hard for a while, and then they'll just start dogging it on you. Mm-hmm. And but you can tell that when you're working with young faculty members, you can tell those that are going to they're going to do well in spite of you. Mm-hmm. Some of them say, well, we never have any money, we can't do this, we can't do that, and others of them just keep on going, keep on getting things. Oops, didn't mean to have that happen. That's just the new technology.
That's it.
But it's just really being treated well by just about everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, we're happy you've made your career here at Oklahoma State, and glad you're.
Well, I've gotten out of town. I've been to China a couple of times. I've been to Sweden, Germany, Australia.
Oh, I'm sure you've been.
I mean, it's
all over.
And a nice thing about going to China and places like that, they always revere the older people.
Are they always shocked, or Oklahoma State? Do they take a double take, or?
No, not really. They generally the people that here, I've got to turn this thing on. Somebody wants me that bad. I don't want to talk to them. When you get there, they've already heard about you. Okay, so, and I've always feel like that I'm overrated. And then when I get talking to them for a while, you got a lot going for you over here in this country, and I mean, that's, a lot of times we just go with reckless abandon. We get a lot of things done fast and quick. Sometimes we make mistakes, but it doesn't seem to cripple anybody. When you do something that it turns out to be not as good as it could have been, or it's a bad idea to begin with. Over there, they have so many people, but they've got so many bright people too. Man, oh man, oh man.
And they're so interested in what's been going on and what's
yeah.
out there, and they're so well educated.
Well, about a month ago or so, we had 6 people from Mongolia. And one of them spoke some English. And we had him here for about 3 or 4 days, and I mean, it's like slow motion. But let me tell you about that 3rd day. You could see the lights were coming on, and then all of a sudden they started thanking you for being so open with everything you had. And so you think, well, what do you mean? Wonder why they think we're so open. So you just ask them, said, well, the Russians occupied us for a long time. They were there to take. You guys here seem to just give us everything, just tell us everything, everything open up your books, open up your homes, everything. Well, okay, good. Good to know that. I don't know if I want to go to Russia. But I'm sure there's not, my mother was born in Russia, in fact. But she was of German parents. But my wife thinks I'm a Russian.
So you still have that old Model T?
Yes.
Where do you keep it?
Bessie. Got a brother down there that has a nice big shop, and it's just in the corner. Think about donating. My dad bought it from a twin brother, and I think I'm going to donate it to the Oklahoma Museum down in Oklahoma City if they want it. It's a bright green with the black fenders, and everybody said, well, no, all Model Ts were black. And not so. Because you could always tell what color a car was in Model Ts, because whenever they manufactured them, they dipped them in paint. They had a big vat full of water and had about this much paint on the top of it. And they just lowered the car through the paint. And that means that you could pop up the seat, take a little wax and wax it off, the metal underneath it, and there would be the original color. It's bright green.
And the farm is still in the family?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Oh, the family farm, they hit oil and gas out there, and I mean, it's embarrassing. You don't want to be crass or gross or anything like that and say, boy, you can't believe how well that's doing. But Western Oklahoma.
It's changed the lives of a lot of farmers.
Oh, my. They don't know what to do. The Judy brothers, 2 boys out there west of Bessie, they all had brand new overalls on. They all had a checkbook in this pocket up here on the overalls and a wood pencil. Still rode in the same old truck. 3 in the front and 1 sitting in the back. Pickup. But their sister now, she knew how to spend the money, but the boys didn't. It came on them too late in life. My wife didn't have a problem.
Well, she's not here to defend herself.
Well, we're not going to ask her to either.
Well, we've kind of fast forward through your life pretty quick, but is there anything else you'd like to mention before we end today?
No, like I said, I come a long line of people that really believe in education, so anybody in the family that wanted to go to school, they could go to school,
And did your kids come to Oklahoma State?
Well, one of them.
One of them.
Yeah, Jason, Erin, she went down to Northeastern, Tahlequah or someplace, and got her degree down there in criminal justice. Now she's not in that field. She's in education, but yeah. Yeah, I went to a wedding down in Oklahoma City, and it was one of my nephew's weddings, his son's wedding, and I got this program, you know, they hand you when you're going to church. I've never seen so many people with the last name Bose. I didn't have a clue who they were. There's just bunches of them, hands full of them, and most of them are in the oil business. You know, and even on my mother's side, she was a buffing. Even on that side, in the oil business. You know, so I mean, it's you say anything bad about oil, well, you know, it's not smart.
Right. Well, we appreciate your time today,
Well, you're welcome.
and welcome. Well, you're here on campus, but welcome to your 50th reunion. I know it's probably hard to believe. It feels like yesterday, right?
Well, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's been 50 years, but you know, I mean, I don't want to do it over either.
Thanks again.
I mean, I wouldn't want to have to go back to school for all that time.